So there you go. So that's all of it there. You look through it, you can see that it's all, everyone's got all their different clustering amounts or glue strengths or whatever. Um, just to follow this through again, this demote is going to grab all of the cat attributes, all of the ones that we've been setting up here. It's going to put them down at the point level, which of course is the same because the points and the prims are the same. It just happens that by the time we come through this thing here, this is making lines where each of the points represents a piece. So we want this to be at the point level. That way it can match up the points to the other points based on their name. This is copying them all over. So just like with the constraint name from before, it's copying over all of the strengths, the breaking strengths, the clustering amounts, and all that jazz. It's copying them all over. It's promoting them to the primitive level, which is the constraint level. And then this thing has to actually, interpret it all. So, we did the strength one already, which is that the strength becomes whatever the cat glue strength was, whatever the minimum was, really. We're going to need to implement the clustering, actually. We have to actually make it do the thing that I said, which was make some unbreakable bonds. So we'll say, hey, what is this constraint's number? Give me a random number based on that. Now it's going to return a number from 0 to 1. Are you less than that percentage amount that cat cluster is? So remember, if cat cluster is 0.15, 15% of the time, the random number returned will be less than that. So if that's the case, now let's do this clustering thing. So your constraint name will not be whatever you were going to be when it was set here. We're now going to override that. And we're going to say you're going to be of a cluster type, which is really just going to be a glue. But I like to keep it separate. It's just, I don't know, easier for me to think about. If the strength is -1, it's unbreakable. Not -2, not -10,000, which is why we set our hard constraint over here to be 1. That way, when I multiply 1 times -1, it is -1. Otherwise, it would be a pain. So, but we need to actually set up that cluster thing. So we go over here. I'm just going to copy and paste this one. We'll just say that this one's called cluster. And there's not going to be anything different about this at all. I'm just going to change the name. I think it just is easier to keep track of. Well, it's easier to keep track of, and I think it actually will be important later. We want to be able to refer to different kinds of constraints, and the cluster ones we'll never need to refer to because they'll always just be there. But we might need to do something to the glue constraints later that can break. So we'll just keep that there for now. So now that we're here, what do we got? We got glues, we got the hard stuff, and what else we got? We got cluster. Let's see those clusters. Let's see what we actually ended up with. Hopefully something. So nothing yet. Actually, I just realized that we shouldn't be checking for cat constraint name here. We should be checking for constraint name. And there we go. In fact, that's true for these as well. So we were more or less the same thing here, but this is more correct. So here's our glues, here's our hards, and here's our clusters. So we've got some window clusters, as you can see. Maybe this will make it a little easier to see. Oh, we've got some clusters in the rotors themselves. We've got some rest at the top. And again, you can customize this to be more or less depending on whatever you set your clustering value to. But we know it's working, and that's all we care about for now. Cool. So let's see what else we need. We're going to need to actually have these things break up. Well, let's just run a sim for now. Let's see what we get now. Now that we've set a whole bunch of new things, let's see what we get from this. All right, so here we go. And we can see that the clusters are indeed working. Where we see, like, here's a piece here, and you can see it's ragged around the side because it looks like it's 2 or 3 pieces stuck together. Same thing over here. We see lots of different sized chunks now. It's harder to say about the rest because we haven't actually implemented the hard constraint breaking yet. We just set it up. But it's suffice to say, it's coming along. I'd also say it's bouncing quite a bit, and sliding a lot. So I would say for our next sim, I'm going to say the ground, for example. Where's our ground at? The ground has physical stuff. Let's make it not be bouncy, and let's actually make it more frictiony than one would think. That'll help keep things in line as we move forward. So good. So we're confident that our clustering is working now. Let's actually go forward with this constraint thing here. So here's our constraint SOP solver. Let's make a wrangler, per usual. And remember that it's here, it's just the pieces are very small. So we need to say, we'll have access to our cat hard break distance and all that stuff in here, and that's what we're going to use. And remember, we have also the actual distance and force to play with as well. So let's actually get some cache back in here, some sim cache, so we can see those attributes. And we'll just say, so this is a good enough spot as any. So I'm gonna just say, hold up here for a minute. So we have, now that we're past the first frame, we have the distance and the force that we're interested in. So I'm gonna say, manage hard constraints, something like that. So we'll say, constraint name equals hard. Something like that. So that way we don't even waste our time running on the glue ones like this. So we'll say, hey, if force, which is a float, if the force, sorry, I hit the microphone again. If force is greater than our, cat, what do we call it? Cat hard break force, then do something, right? Then, well, just add it to the broken group broken. And broken is a group that is recognized by the bullet solver. So it's not, this one is not just arbitrary. This one means that you are literally broken if you are in this group. You could be unbroken by being taken out of the group. It's just essentially ignored otherwise. So that's fine. What else? We had, or if that distance is greater than our other thing, cat hard break dist. So those are the two times when it can break. I think I have one too many parentheses in here. There it is. Cool. Some people would advocate that you only choose one or the other because it's easier to direct if you know which one's causing the breaks. I don't necessarily disagree. I think that can be fine, but I don't think two is too many. I definitely don't like when pieces stretch too far that they should be broken. So this, to me, I kind of think of it as the force is the primary thing that's breaking it, and this dist thing is like, if you should have broken by now, break. Like if you get too far that it's visibly obvious that you're kind of floating away from the rest of it, then also break it. That's kind of the way that I approach it. So now we can play it, and we can also play around with the forces, like the actual breaking points, the thresholds that we specified already, because we don't know if the ones we chose are perfect. We just kind of eyeballed it when we looked at the geometry spreadsheet before. But let's see. We should see some. Ideally, we should see some green pieces breaking off now because they're the hard constraint stuff. Yeah, and look, it's basically collapsing now. So the hard constraints are being broken all over the place. Not all of them. You can see chunks are staying together. Like here's a chunk, here's a chunk. This is still way too much, but we're confident that it's working. We see lots of these ragged chunks are staying together, and this might be nice for a different effect. Maybe a walls being blown away. Even hard like ceramic, or rather a brick and stuff like that should probably have hard constraints to give it a little bit of flexibility. Or maybe plastic, I don't know. But you can see Lots of cool stuff happening in here now. We can see pieces of like the chairs are stuck to the fuselage, which is correct. They've been glued on. So we've got a lot of cool emergent things happening of pieces of rotor still stuck to the assembly. We've got, you know, chunks of things here that are hard constrained. This is way too much, but we're on the right track once again. Great. So that's hard constraints in a nutshell. Now we're going to start to learn about the other constraint just a little bit. Let's make a cone constraint, a cone twist to keep so that the propellers don't just stop like that. I want them to keep spinning as it comes down.